Welcome to Punish for Protecting Live with Francesca Amato.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Punish for Protecting Live. Today, we have a segment called Dishonorable. You know, in America, we have judges that most of my friends, co-advocates, and parents all can agree that we don't want to call them honorable. To be honorable is to be someone with virtue, someone that cares, someone that crosses every T and dots every I, someone that you can take your issues to and know that they're going to give you the best outcome for safety, welfare, protection, and to make sure that your life is better. We do not see that in our American court system. And what a fitting day, the 4th of July, to talk about the dishonorable judges in the family court system. And today, unfortunately, we can't fit them all. There's so many that my emails are going off. They're still going off before we began this broadcast, with people wanting to show the dishonorable judges that have done nothing short than abuse their children. This is a highly disturbing and highly vile situation that is occurring in America, inside our borders. Is anyone paying attention to what's happening within our borders? Do you see the mass protests that are happening everywhere? I mean, turn on the TV or drive down the street and you will see thousands of protesters. Why? Because people are triggered. They're seeing children being separated from immigrants. Now, I do not feel that that is right. It's wrong. Think of the children. Let's think of the children. How are they feeling? How would you feel as a child if suddenly you're ripped apart from your loving caretakers, your parents, the very people that God saw fit to have you be brought into this world by? And now suddenly some stranger comes along and takes you away, just hauls you off. And so it's triggered a nerve in America saying something isn't right with this. And all over front page news, on the media, we're seeing children shouldn't be separated from their parents. A light bulb has gone off. What have we been saying? We've been saying this over and over, 24 hours a day, for what, 40 years? And no one's listening. We pull together advocates. We do protests ourselves, and we get 10 people, one person. Sometimes we get 1,000 people to show up, very seldomly. And we make little tiny steps forward. We get people to say, I understand. Something's not right with this judicial system. But it hasn't actually moved to the place where we need it to move. And it's been a detrimental effect on the health and safety of our nation's children. And more importantly, if you think there's something not more important than kids, well, there is. The very adults that are placed to protect them and to protect you, myself, and our family units. America is all about families. But if the enemy continues to destroy the family, we will not have a country. So today, as many of you are out barbecuing, lighting off fireworks, and celebrating this day of independence, think to yourself, where's your freedoms and what has happened? We're about to show you a video clip to show you what's happening, so you see the reality of what's happening inside our borders.
That's what we do. We take 5-year-old little boys away from their mommy and
Even very brief separations are stressful to infants and young children.
And pulled it so much that he has a huge bald spot.
Our sympathetic nervous system kicks in and impels us to try to cope with this separation by calling for the parent, crying, getting upset, signaling that we need the parent back to be our source of security and safety and regulation.
So, other people grab their hand and take them to the car and bring them there. And it scares me.
It begins to damage brain cells. Hippocampal cells will die. That's our memory center. If the electrical activity in the brain is being reduced by these more prolonged separations.
The other thing that's affected in the brain is the amygdala. It's the fight or flight center. So when you've got this really overactive amygdala, the ability to be able to evaluate risk, make good decisions is compromised. Not only does it affect the architecture of the brain, but long term it affects health and early death.
Is the foundation on which we build our exploration and our autonomy and our curiosity and the cognitive skills with which we're going to negotiate the world. It's a very fundamental system to protect, and it's foundational to many of the child's developmental achievements. Time is very important when you're dealing with very young children because you begin to see this deterioration fairly quickly. The idea that you're going to hold a young child away from the parent for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks is an enormity of time for a young child. They just know that the parent is absent, and that can be equivalent to the parent basically being dead or having abandoned them.
You are hurting me! I don't see any good left in Child Protective Services.
These people are stealing children.
One of the things we see in children reared in institutions in the first 2 years of life is that the attachment system goes badly awry.
Ultimately, that relationship with the caregiver predicts the kind of interpersonal relationships that the child will have as they get older.
It's very important if we want to prevent later very problematic outcomes for these kids. The younger the child, the more urgent it is.
Recovery is certainly possible, but I think the prognosis for most of these children is they're not going to be okay.
The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you.
Personally, I vote for you, and I vote for myself. If we don't change this, I guarantee it, no one will. So I want to talk a little bit about some stats here, and I'm going to quote from Sarah Frank. Over 300,000 children are stolen from their families every year. That's an average of 821 a day. That's 34 each hour, which means an American child is legally kidnapped under color of law every 2 minutes. Do we see a problem here in America, in our own country? Today, July 4th, as you celebrate Independence Day, we hear it all the time. We hear that our flag still stands for freedom. We're about to show you some of the judges' dishonorables.
Keep talking. They're just right next to you.
Okay, they're right next to me. So here you have some of the dishonorable judges. Like I said, I couldn't fit them all in. They're still coming in. And all you know that you're sending me your judges, and I hate to call them your judges. You know, one day they will be judged for the jobs that they've done and the destruction that they've caused countless children. To me, they are the true child abusers. You're looking at them right here on this screen. These are the true child abusers, and we must put a stop to their damages. I am a firm believer in fair justice, and if we don't have a judicial system that's put in check, we do not have a judicial system. If these judges don't go to jail for their crimes, then we don't have a justice system. We have a country in turmoil and a country that is full of injustice. And that's not what our justice system was meant to be. As you see these faces, some of you know them very well. They are the dishonorable judges of our country, the USA, and they span every state in our nation. They're ripping children away from good mothers and good fathers. They're making it so that you can't be near your own child. They're making it, like this guy, so that you can't protect your children. They're politically connected to our police. They're politically connected to our entire legislation in our states. Everybody's got their hand in the cookie jar, and they're not doing it in an ethical manner. They're not handling your family. So when you walk into a family court, you just literally walked into the twilight zone. You've just allowed these guys to destroy your family. And as we know, and as I know, by the amount of mail I get and the people I talk to every day, your children are used as pawn and being severely damaged. It's time we make a change. We have a big event that's coming up. It's called For the Children, September 8th through 11th, which we will show you a little bit more about. And here's one of the clips on here. We'll show you a little bit more about throughout this broadcast today. It's an event that I highly recommend, whether you're a parent, an advocate, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, friends, you've known somebody, or you yourself have personally dealt with the abusive family court system in America, where they're stripping apart families at an unprecedented rate, or CPS, where they're actually making orders without a judge's signature or stamp. You need to be at this event. You need to support this event any way possible. Even just showing up to the event is support of this event. And there's also a website that you can go to, which is For the Children. Now, we'll get that up here in a second. It's For the Children. Forgive me for a second. Let me get the right one. forthechildren.center, SCENTER, forthechildren.center, and that's the number 4. So you can find out more about the event, lodging, and all the wonderful things that will be happening between and now I want to talk about how to handle these corrupt judges, these dishonorable judges. How do we handle them? What do? Do we just say, oh, that's okay, you've destroyed families, you've allowed children to be murdered, you've allowed children to be sex trafficked, sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally traumatized, emotionally abused, you've caused them lifelong serious injury, and it's okay, we're just going to let that go and possibly put in new judges to take your place and just leave it at that? That's not justice, and that's not how we need to handle things. What I say is what Don Ruffy says. We need to prosecute the dishonorable judges that you see on the page today, and we need to arrest them, and they need to go to jail for their crimes. These are crimes. If you or I did any of the things that they do, we would be behind bars for these actions, and therefore, that's what they need to do. And so now we're going to show you a clip from our very own Don Ruffy. And he's going to talk about an executive order that's in proposal that people are signing, and you can sign it and share it, please. That will be presented before Congress and before the president at the event For the Children. And we are going to beseech the president to sign this executive order in order to jail the judges.
Hello. The proposed executive order mentions several items in the law, which I'm going to go over at this time. U.S. Code Title 18, Section 242 is mentioned because it forms the basis for incarceration for the crooked judges or any other government official who violates anybody's rights at any time. These are addendums or exhibits that accompany the proposed executive order. Exhibit A, U.S. Code Title 18, Section 242, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law. Section 242 of Title 18 makes it a crime for a person acting in color of any law to willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States. For the purpose of Section 242, acts under color of law include acts not only done by federal, state, or local officials within their lawful authority, but also acts done beyond the bounds of that official's lawful authority. If the acts are done while the official is purporting to or pretending to act in the performance of his or her official duties. Persons acting in color of law within the meaning of this statute include police officers, prison guards, and other law enforcement officials, as well as judges, care providers in public health facilities, and others who are acting as public officials. It is not necessary that the crime be motivated by animus toward the race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin of the victim. The offense is punishable by a range of imprisonment up to a life term, or the death penalty, depending upon the circumstances of the crime and the resulting injury, if any. That's U.S. Code Title 18, Section 242. Pretty clear. Exhibit B, the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. Rule 3, the complaint. The complaint is a written statement of the essential facts constituting the offense charged. Except as provided in Rule 4.1, it must be made under oath before a magistrate judge, or, if none is reasonably available, before a state or local judicial officer. Rule 4. Arrest warrant or summons on a complaint. A. Issuance. If the complaint or one or more affidavits filed with the complaint establish probable cause to believe that an offense has been committed and that the defendant committed it, the judge must issue an arrest warrant to an officer authorized to execute it. At the request of an attorney for the government, the judge must issue a summons instead of a warrant to a person authorized to serve it. A judge may issue more than one warrant or summons on the same complaint. If a defendant fails to appear in response to a summons, a judge may, upon request of an attorney for the government, must issue a warrant. That's Rules 3 and 4 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. The Supremacy Clause is also mentioned. That's Exhibit C. The Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution, Article 6, Clause 2, establishes that the Constitution, federal laws made pursuant to it, and treaties made under its authority constitute the supreme law of the land. It provides that state courts are bound by the supreme law in case of conflict between federal and state law. The federal law must be applied. Even state constitutions are subordinate to federal law. In essence, it is a conflict of laws. A rule specifying that certain national acts take priority over any state acts that conflict with national law. In this respect, the Supremacy Clause follows the lead of Article 8, the Articles of Confederation, which provided that every state shall abide by the determination of the United States in Congress assembled on all questions which by this Confederation are submitted to them. Constitutional provision announcing the supremacy of federal law. The Supremacy Clause assumes the underlying priority of federal authority, at least when that authority is expressed in the Constitution itself. No matter what the federal government or the states might wish to do, they have to stay within the boundaries of the Constitution. This makes the Supremacy Clause the cornerstone of the whole American political structure. This is the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding.
Okay, so that's our solution. These are our solutions, and we have to have solutions. We cannot continue to chase our tail in this movement, or so-called movement in some of it, because not getting the justice back into this country is nothing short of injustice, which makes these judges absolutely dishonorable. And the silent screams of American children are not heard anywhere. No one knows that this is even happening within our borders because they're concerned about what's happening outside of our borders. And that is a tragedy to our soldiers, our veterans, and all those that fought, died, and bled for this nation. And now I'm going to read to you something for today, and that is our Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence was put into Congress on July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America at that time. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience had shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them from absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for the future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attain to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right too inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies as places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such solutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount of payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. He has affected to render the military independent of the superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment from any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefit of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war on us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of civilized nations. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been unanswered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be a ruler of the free people. Nor have we been wanting its attentions. And I'm going to stop at that portion there, because today we can relate to that almost verbatim in what we're seeing in our nation and repeating history in so many aspects. And now against our very children in our nation that are treated like absolutely nothing. Our children in our nation are used as pawns. Our government is using them in order to gain financial, just complete authority through finances by draining out the family and separating and dislodging the family unit and taking over and controlling every aspect of your life and mine. We have to stop these dishonorables. These dishonorables are the king, so to speak. This is the way it's playing out now, and we must put an end to it. And that is what we're doing. So please sign the petition for the executive order, and please see us in Washington, D.C., September 8th through the 11th for the For the Children event. And I'm going to close with my book, a best-selling book that has sold hundreds of thousands of copies, both through Kindle and hard copy. Why is this book selling the way it is? You relate to it. This has affected everyone, male, female, it doesn't matter. Democrat, independent, Republican, no party. If you're a believer, a non-believer, you've been affected. This disease, this epidemic, this enemy has no boundaries anymore. Rich or poor, politically connected, or just your next door neighbor. It's affected you, and it will affect you if you don't help us put a stop to it.